Hey guys, I'm Devin, and I'm wanting to make a video discussing just Ghost Recon in general. Um, in this discussion, I want to talk about uh, possible futures for the franchise. And I know that this is sort of a dead horse that's kind of getting beaten down a lot, but I grew up playing this franchise. I've been playing it for like nearly 18 years at this point. Um, the first Ghost Recon game I played was the original, like the PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2, something like that. It was one of my stepdad's copies, so that's how I first got into this series. And then my stepbrother had an Xbox 360, and we played the Advanced Warfighter 2 games on there. And then I ended up getting a PlayStation 3 a couple years later and got to play Advanced Warfighter 2 on the PlayStation 3. And since then, I've been playing the franchise since I was like, Jesus, since I was like, what, six? So that's 20 years now I've been playing the franchise. And I've noticed after just kind of going back through and looking about how the franchise is kind of taking a steady dip in quality and in just the game series themselves since 2012, since Future Soldier. And I guess I want to start this discussion by what I really disliked in both Wildlands and Ghost Recon Breakpoint, since the two are, in my opinion, some of the worst of the series. And if they were your first Ghost Recon game, you might have some very differing opinions. But yeah, that's just kind of how I feel starting out the series. So my one of my biggest issues that I have with both Wildlands and Breakpoint is the open world format. I don't think it really works for this series. It kind of feels like you're playing Assassin's Creed in the Ghost Recon skin, and that's not something that I think the franchise should really keep doing. It's not as good of gameplay, I would say. The AI definitely struggles a lot in the open worlds, and you can just kind of pass by enemies a lot, and the difficulty of the enemies varies. Like in Wildlands, the only way how the enemies truly feel difficult is if you're in tier 1 mode, which is them just essentially being able to detect you faster and their bullets hit harder. That is pretty much it. The difficulty modders, the difficulties in that game. And then in Breakpoint, um, I think the most difficult thing about that game is just the the AI in that game. Like, I don't know, some of the environments are clunky to actually maneuver around, so it's just not really fun whenever I try to go back through and play that game, and the environments themselves are clunky. And then also just it's the like artificial robots in that game. I I think that's the most difficult part because the enemy AI of like the humans is absolutely stupid in both games, honestly. In both games, the enemies just kind of charge at you in a very dumb pattern. They just stand out in the open, try charging at you. They don't really use cover-based mechanics or anything like that. And I think that's where I really start noticing how bad the franchise is getting. And this might be a differing opinion, and some of you might agree with this. So I wanted to just kind of discuss and reach out to the Ghost Recon community and just kind of have a discussion with them about what they like and what they don't like in the series, and currently what is going on in the series. The most recent reports that we've had of Project Over is that it is in a very bad development cycle to the point where they might have to cancel and rebuild an entire game, which is really concerning that it's been 7 years since Breakpoint released, and we still don't even have a trailer or official news about the new Ghost Recon game, besides that it's in development. That's all that we know. And another really concerning part is that from, I want to say, the original Ghost Recon up until Future Soldier, the games were partially developed by Red Storm Entertainment, and I believe it was April or March of this year, where Red Storm Development was hit with layoffs by Ubisoft. It was 105 employees were laid off, and the studio is now shut down. Which, if you're wondering why I'm bringing up Red Storm, it's because they've made essentially what was the best Ghost Recon games, and essentially what was the face of the Ghost Recon franchise. Which is kind of concerning with how they are trying to currently take this series. Something else I really don't like about Wildlands is also the teammate controls, and this is also in Breakpoint. Whenever you tell them to open fire, they just go around like Rambo trying to kill everything. And if you're in tier 1 mode, they get instantly killed. And it's not an enjoyable gameplay experience. And the enemy AI is also very similar to that. And that kind of kills the identity of what Ghost Recon was. Like, it was a squad based third person tactical shooter. It's how it's best established its identity. That got started in Ghost Recon 2 and then the Advanced Warfighter series. Um, Ghost Recon 1 was again a tactical shooter, squad based mechanics and stuff like that. But also, it was more of a reticle shooter, so not exactly first person. Like, you wouldn't actually be able to see your weapon or aim down the sights of the weapons. And so I kind of have an idea with sort of the ideal gameplay and sort of the basis of how the next Ghost Recon game should be sort of built like. Um, and this is coming back to sort of the first Ghost Recon, where it was more of an open sandbox. You kind of dropped off into an environmental area, and then you would go clear out some of the camps, or maybe you have to do something there. I can't really remember it. But you essentially would clear out the enemy camps and everything else, and maybe blow up something. And that led to a variety of environments, and I think that was a better build for it. And you can do all different types of tactical maneuvers and stuff like that in an open sandbox, and I think that would work out better for the series. And then when it comes to the actual gameplay and the mechanics, I think it should be built more and similar to the Advanced Warfighter series. In the Advanced Warfighter series and also in the original Ghost Recon game, you were limited with the squad mates that you had. Um, if your squad mates got downed, um, you would have to use one of your med packs, and in some of the missions, you may have only had 4 med packs if you didn't choose a medic. And so you would really have to be cautious of how you moved your teammates through the environment. And also in the Advanced Warfighter series, if you didn't have a medic on your squad, you yourself would not be able to heal because it had a health mechanic in there. Also, Captain Mitchell himself, if he got shot and injured, he would move slower and move with a limp. But it wasn't to the severity point of Breakpoint, where essentially you become a sitting duck and you have to sit here and do this holding mechanic in this quick time event in there to try and regain your health, which I don't really enjoy. I think it kills the momentum of the game and kind of just kills the immersion of the combat when you're sitting there having to try and heal yourself versus where in Advanced Warfighter, if you didn't have a medic, you couldn't heal yourself. And you would also have to order the medic to come patch you up. So, and you were limited on the amount of times you could heal yourself. I think at most when you had a medic, it was 7 medkits. And so you would really have to focus on trying to keep your squad mates up because if they went down, you would have to use one of the medkits. And if you couldn't get them up, they would be gone permanently throughout the rest of the campaign that you played. And then also when it came to the roles and the specialties of the Advanced Warfighter, there was gunner, rifleman, medic, grenadier, and I believe anti-tank gunner. and a marksman. So you would have essentially three ghosts that would be your main loadout, and you would have to choose between the four classes of them. And with that, in the four classes, you would have to approach each combat scenario differently and also be much more cautious with how you approach things because you may not have the same skill set that you could just open up fire on a position than before last mission. Um, I think that was much better design and a much more tactical gameplay style than what we have in Wildlands and Breakpoint, where you just got four AI teammates, and essentially you could sit there and customize their loadouts and stuff like that, and just essentially build an over broken or over powerful type of thing. And Wildlands, they just felt like Rambo. And also the chatter with the Wildlands cast, and I guess some of the chatter with Breakpoint. The AI just kind of seemed weird. It just seemed like a weird conversations were going on. And I was recently watching Advanced Warfighter gameplay, and there are times where like some of the squad mates and stuff would be talking, calling out different enemy positions, spotting the enemies for you. And if you needed to be quiet or try and just observe, Captain Mitchell would tell them zip it or lock it up and be quiet and wait for his order to give fire in that position, which is another tactical element that it seems to be lacking in the last two series a lot. I think when it comes to the weapon gameplay and like sort of the gunsmith going on with um Wildlands, I think that was fun. It was interesting, but also kind of lackluster compared to other games like Insurgency Sandstorm. Um, with Insurgency Sandstorm, you essentially build your like kit, and that game's just multiplayer or co-op, and you have different reticles, and each reticle and stuff would have its different thing. And I think that's kind of how not Wildlands, but the Nats Ghost Recon game needs to handle game like gunplay. Is if you have certain scopes and stuff, you can't really just zoom in and out, but maybe you can use like maybe the iron sights on the weapon itself to try and aim. But again, back to the squad-based mechanics, I think it should be closer to Advanced Warfighter. Because also in Advanced Warfighter, you might have missions where you are given a helicopter to help assist. You might have a tank to help assist. Or you might have a jet. But these were also very limited throughout the entire campaign and also very limited usage. Like you couldn't sit there and use a jet to just carpet bomb the entire area. And you would just have to be cautious because if you were also caught in the open area of like maybe a tank trying to hit another tank and stuff, you would very easily just get killed in that game. And also within games, you yourself cannot be revived or picked up by your teammates, like in Future Soldier, Wildlands, or Breakpoint. But yeah, overall, that was part of the first part that I wanted to discuss. Is just overall, I think it should be more so a open sandbox built environment, and then have the gameplay mechanics of Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter series, where it's third person. You kind of build your loadout in the very beginning of the mission, or maybe you go to a rally point and you select a tactical and a lethal grenade, and that's your special kit. You pick a um, secondary weapon, which would be like a pistol, and I think in some rare instances it might be like a submachine gun if they force you to use like maybe a sniper rifle or a uh, I know that they had like actual rocket weapons like AT-4. Like some missions you were forced to carry an AT-4 to take out certain heavy equipment pieces. And yeah, I think that's something that they should actually go back to. And like you would, but your main primary was an assault rifle. Sometimes it was a sniper rifle. And I think that's something else that they should go back to is that you would have to build your kit going into the mission and you can't just really swap out like in Wildlands or Breakpoint. And then I think another main part for me is the co-op. The co-op in these games is genuinely awful, in my opinion. I think it's awful. It's just a four-person co-op mode, and with that, all you do is just go back through and play the main missions again. And the co-op in Ghost Recon 2 and the Advanced Warfighter series is much more in line with Insurgency Sandstorm. With Insurgent, and if you've played Insurgency Sandstorm, you know it's like a 16-player co-op mission. You all build your loadouts, you go in, and you go out and clear objectives. Or maybe it's just you survive at a certain point for so long. And in Advanced Warfighter 2, it was like that. It was third person. You would build your loadout before, like just like in the campaign, it was a 16-player co-op mode too. So it was an open sandbox. You'd approach it all different types of ways. They had a variety of environments, like some were jungles, some were more of a desert area, some were like industrial, complex areas, like a Panama Canal type of area where you'd have to go through and do certain things. Like maybe you'd have to blow up like heavy vehicle equipment. You might have to clear out certain areas. In some of the areas, you'd have to hold off an enemy defense or enemy counterattack and try to get there. And also, I know that a lot of the online gameplay was also like you could be one and done with your life. Like you get killed and you don't respond back throughout the entire match, and you can sit there and watch your teammates try to make it all the way back through. So that to me was fun. Then Wildlands, like Wildlands was still fun, but it wasn't truly innovative. It was like it was like Future Soldier. I never played Future Soldier with any online teammates. I beat the entire campaign on Elite, and I did do the Guerrilla mode in split screen, which I thought was a fun additional mode. But overall, I wouldn't say that mode was more fun than the actual 16-player online mode. And you would all have to sit there and work together, and all of you would have to build your loadouts accordingly to your class. Like if someone was a marksman, they would only be able to have access to sniper rifle class weapons. If someone was a grenadier, they would have grenade launchers on their rifles and stuff, or maybe they'd have a ATV, AT4, something like that, to go through and blow up heavy machinery. And of course, riflemen were riflemen, and gunners would carry light machine guns. So you would have to build your squad accordingly. But overall, that was a much more tactical build and a tactical way to approach things. Like Insurgency Sandstorm, I think there's a lot that they can learn from Insurgency Sandstorm when it comes to the co-op mode. Now, for the multiplayer, this is where I think Wildlands and Breakpoint are their absolute worst. It's just a 4v4 mode. I think that was fun at first, but then it just essentially was Rainbow Six Siege in the Ghost Recon skin, in the Ghost Recon world. But overall, it was lackluster. It wasn't innovative, really. It didn't really change the game, and essentially just became who could eliminate all four players first. And for me, it was okay at first, but then after like, I don't know, like a month or two, I quit playing it. And the fact that they didn't have that in at Wildlands' launch is genuinely just kind of awful because I don't know how they couldn't manage to put 8 players in a single server for that series. And then in Ghost Recon Breakpoint, it was the exact same thing, just in the Breakpoint skin, which was genuinely terrible. And Wildlands and Breakpoint both launched with completely broken states, and which is another reason why I think we should avoid the open world series and stuff. But yeah, I think that's about all for my rambling, and if you've made it this far, I'd like to hear your thoughts and your opinions with how the series should go. And if you want to talk more about Ghost Recon, consider liking and subscribing here. Thanks for your time, and I hope you guys have a good day.